The real horror here isn't the gunfire, it's the ownership. Elena's forced marriage to Victor Drazi is not romance, not even strategy, but a textbook exercise in coercive domination. Victor displays classic grandiose control. He does not want partnership, he wants total possession, and Elena, trapped between fear, family guilt, and survival, is pushed into a trauma bond before the marriage even begins. Then Adrian enters and fractures the psychological cage in a single sentence: she has a choice. That is why this moment is so explosive, because for predators like Victor, nothing is more dangerous than a victim who suddenly remembers she is human.
For most people, walking down the aisle means a new beginning. For Elena Cross, it was the dotted line on a grim contract, with her body as the final signature. Her entire being was the price tag. At the altar, Victor Drazi wasn't waiting for a bride. He was waiting for his latest acquisition. Inside a cold Chicago church packed with stone-cold killers, it hit her. This wasn't a wedding. It was a hostile takeover. But when a violent interruption shatters the ceremony and a total stranger offers a way out, she has two choices: get erased or get liberated in a blaze of glory. The fallout from her decision is about to shake the city's entire underworld. Chicago's October wind cut right through the thin lace of Elena's gown, a feeling she knew all too well. The white dress was supposed to mean purity, which was a sick joke. She was just high-end property changing hands. Her reflection in the church anteroom was a total stranger. This dress was a perfect fit, a creepy detail her father had managed. He'd set up every single thing for this disaster except for her iron will. "Mija, you look amazing." Elena's jaw clenched. Her father, Carlos Cross, stood in the doorway, his fancy suit doing a poor job of hiding the constant trembling he'd had since owing Victor Drazi big time. "Don't you dare call me that!" Elena's voice was dangerously low. "You lost that right when you used me to pay off your debts." Carlos flinched but stood his ground. "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." She spun around, the fire in her eyes making him step back. "You gambled away everything. Our house, my mom's jewelry, your own soul. When you had nothing left, you bet me. Victor is a good man." "Victor is a monster." The word was ugly and final. "He deals in weapons, drugs, and fear. Half the city is terrified of him, the other half works for him. And you're serving me up on a silver platter." Carlos's face hardened. "You don't understand these things." "Oh, I understand everything." Elena's voice turned to pure ice, a defense mechanism she'd perfected. "I understand you're a coward. I understand you'd feed your own daughter to the wolves to escape your mess. And I understand that from this day forward I'm an orphan." The words were like punches. For a desperate second, she prayed he'd just break, beg for forgiveness, give her an out. She wanted a glimpse of the father he used to be, but Carlos Cross was too hollowed out by fear for that. "The wedding is in 15 minutes, he said, his voice completely empty. "Be on time." Then he turned and walked away. Elena faced that stranger in the mirror again. The fancy hairstyle wasn't her. The makeup was from an artist on Victor's payroll. The dress cost more than half a year's salary from the photo studio he made her quit. The wives of guys like Victor don't have careers, he'd told her. They just exist. Her phone buzzed against her hip. A bad idea, a temptation she should have ignored. But her hand moved before her brain could stop it. The text was from Sarah, her best friend, the only person who screamed that this whole deal was insane. "It's not too late. I have the car. I have money. Just say the word." Elena's thumb hovered over the screen. It was so easy. Just 3 letters. Y-E-S. Sarah would come. They'd disappear. But that was a fantasy. Victor Drazi doesn't lose his things. Guys like him have long memories and an even longer reach. If she ran, others would pay the price. Sarah would be hunted. Carlos would be eliminated. She deleted the text without a reply just as the door creaked open again. Victor's sister, Celeste, stood in the doorway, her designer clothes like armor and her smile like a weapon. "It's time," she said, looking Elena over like a piece of merchandise. "Victor is waiting." "He must be over the moon." Celeste's smile stayed put, but her eyes went cold. "A little advice. The faster you accept your new life, the less it will hurt. Victor is very generous to those who make him happy, and very cruel to these who don't." "Is that the story you tell yourself?" Elena stared right back. "To live with whatever put that darkness in your own eyes." For just a flash, Celeste's perfect image cracked. A flicker of old, deep pain showed through before her discipline slammed it back down. "You'll learn," Celeste hissed, "one way or another." She left, leaving Elena with nothing but the sound of the church bells. Her time was up. She walked down the hall, feeling totally disconnected from her own body. At the end, Carlos was waiting to finish the delivery. "Elena," he started. "Don't!" She took his arm because she had to, her eyes fixed straight ahead. "Just don't speak!" The huge sanctuary doors swung open. St. Augustine's was filled with a silent crowd of men in dark suits with empty expressions. This was Victor's crew, his muscle, his family, his territory. Her father's loan sharks were probably in the crowd, watching their investment with satisfaction. And there, at the altar, stood Victor Drazi. He was handsome in a way that screamed danger, all sharp angles and barely contained power. At 42, he'd built an empire on Chicago's worst habits. His tux was flawless. He smiled at her, but it never reached his eyes. His eyes were the most disturbing thing about him. They were dark, cold, and assessing, like a guy checking out a new car, trying to find its limits. Elena forced her body forward. Left foot. Right foot. Don't think. Just move. The wedding march sounded like a death sentence. Halfway to the altar, she messed up and met his gaze again. He winked. That casual, possessive move shattered her fragile composure. This was real. In a few minutes, she'd be legally tied to this man who would own her completely with no way out. She was 3 rows from the altar when the church doors exploded inward. There was no bomb, but the sound of splintering wood against stone hit like a physical blow. Every head whipped around. A man was silhouetted against the gray light. Tall, imposing, his black suit built for action, not looks. He didn't rush. He just walked down the aisle with a chilling calm that stole the air from Elena's lungs. The place went nuts. Victor's guys whipped out guns from their jackets. People screamed and dove between the pews for cover. The priest backed away from the altar, hands up like a hostage. The stranger didn't slow down. "Adrian." Victor's voice sliced through the noise. "You've got a lot of nerve coming here." So, they had history. The man, Adrian, stopped right beside Elena. Up close, his face was hard, like it was made of violent memories. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow. His eyes were almost black, and when they met Elena's, it felt like she'd been hit. "Elena Cross," he said, his voice a low rumble that was scarier than any shout. "You have a choice." "She's going nowhere with you," Victor snarled. "She belongs to me, paid in full." "You can't own a person." Adrian's eyes stayed locked on Elena. "No matter what deals were made, you are not an object. You're a woman and you have a choice." Elena's heart pounded against her ribs. A circle of Victor's men now surrounded them, guns aimed, just waiting for the order. This guy was about to die for crashing a wedding, and he was offering her a lifeline. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm the man walking out of this church," Adrian answered and held out his hand. "The only variable is if you're walking out with me." "This is insane," Carlos hissed beside her. "Elena, don't move." "Your opinion is no longer required," Adrian shot back, his eyes sweeping over Carlos with pure contempt before landing back on Elena. "The choice is hers. If you leave with him," Victor's voice dropped to a lethal whisper, "I will hunt you. I'll make you watch me burn down everything you've ever cared about, and then you'll beg me to take you back." Elena knew he meant it. Victor Drazi wasn't the type to bluff, but stuck between the man who bought her and the stranger offering salvation, one thing was obvious. Either way, her old life was already over. Marrying Victor meant being erased, a slow death of her spirit under the weight of his control. Going with Adrian meant risking a quick, violent end, a bullet, a knife, something fast. Between those two options, only one let her die, as herself. Elena's fingers closed around Adrian's. His grip was warm and strong, a connection that sent a shock through her, changing everything. A raw sound ripped out of Victor, half order, half curse. The difference didn't matter as the church erupted into gunfire, but Adrian was already moving, pulling Elena behind him, his body a living shield as they began to fight their way out, just not toward the main doors. Their main exit was blocked, so Adrian switched gears, heading for a small side door. Gunfire erupted, a brutal cacophony of splintering wood and shattering stained glass. A scream tore through the air, no telling if it was a guest or one of Victor's thugs. Adrian just kicked the door clean off its hinges and shoved her into a dark, narrow hallway that smelled like old incense. At the other end was the street. "Stop!" Elena choked out, the wedding dress turning into a designer cage. "I can't run in this." Without missing a beat, Adrian knelt and ripped the entire bottom half of her gown clean off. The sound of tearing fabric snapped through the hallway like a gunshot. Elena just stared, her dress now symbolizing the life that was just destroyed. "Much better," he grunted, grabbing her hand and pulling her along. They burst onto a side street where a black SUV was waiting like a shark. He practically threw Elena inside before jumping in after her. "Go," was all he said. The silver-haired driver didn't need to be told twice. The SUV shot away from the curb just as Victor's goons swarmed the church entrance, guns up. Elena heard more shots and felt a hard swerve as they vanished into Chicago traffic with terrifying skill. She was slammed against Adrian's side, his arm like a steel bar across her as he shielded her from any potential gunfire. Her heart hammered against her ribs and her hands were shaking so bad she had to ball them into fists. "What?" she stammered. "What was that?" Adrian's reply was laced with pure, dark sarcasm. "A wedding, followed by a swift annulment. My compliments." A laugh, ugly and broken, ripped out of Elena's throat. It was pure trauma with zero humor, a hysterical wave of sobs and gasps she couldn't stop. Adrian just sat there like a statue, letting her emotional storm burn itself out. Once she fell into a shivering silence, she finally got a good look at him. "Why?" she demanded. "Why all this chaos?" His face was a total blank. "Because Victor Drazi is a disease, and you weren't going to be his next victim." "You don't even know me." "I know everything I need to." That statement was both a puzzle and a straight-up threat. Before she could push, the driver cut in. "We've got a tail, 2 cars hanging back." Elena whipped her head around to see 2 black sedans weaving through traffic, closing the distance. ETA to the sanctuary? Adrian asked calmly. 20 minutes, maybe 15 if we get creative. Be creative. The SUV lurched forward, pinning Elena to her seat. They tore through Chicago's streets, blowing through lights and cutting through alleys like the driver had the city's blueprints in his brain. But Victor's guys were good. Marcus, Adrian said to the driver, his voice impossibly steady. When we hit Lakeshore Drive, get rid of them. Permanently. Elena's nails dug into the leather. Who are you people? We're the X factor that's keeping you breathing, Marcus shot back from the front seat. For anything else, you'll have to ask him. My job is to drive. They merged onto Lakeshore Drive doing 70. The skyline became a blur of metal and glass. Marcus drove like a maniac with surgical precision, forcing Elena to shut her eyes. When she opened them again, the two cars were gone. Targets neutralized back at the interchange, Marcus reported. We're in the clear. Adrian's arm finally relaxed. Good. Stay sharp. Victor is predictably ambitious. Victor will kill me, Elena said, pure terror taking over. He'll kill all of us. He'll certainly try, Adrian agreed. But to do that, he has to find us first. This is Chicago. He runs 50% of this city. And I run the other 50. Adrian locked eyes with her, and what she saw was scarier than Victor's madness. Total, absolute confidence. Victor Drazi has pull, but he's not a god. To get to you, he has to go through me. But why? Elena begged again. Why do you care? What am I to you? Adrian just turned to look out at the cold gray lake. You're someone who didn't deserve to be treated like property, he finally said. It was a non-answer, and it was all she was getting as they sped out of the city. The buildings thinned out, replaced by trees. Marcus finally turned down a private road that ended at a gate straight out of a military base. He punched in a code, and the gate slid open. Beyond it was a monster of a house, all sharp angles of stone and glass built into a hill by the lake. It was gorgeous and terrifying, surrounded by high walls, cameras, and guards in suits who watched them pull up without a flicker of emotion. Welcome home, Adrian said, and the way he said it made her skin crawl. This wasn't a home. It was a high-tech prison. She'd just swapped one warden for another. Marcus stopped the SUV, and before she could blink, Adrian was opening her door, holding out a hand. She hesitated. This was the hand that had pulled her out of hell and into this new nightmare. But what choice did she have? She took it. The October wind off the lake was brutal, slicing right through her shredded dress. She was frozen and completely lost. Adrian took off his suit jacket and put it around her shoulders. It was warm and smelled of expensive cologne and gunpowder. Come on, he said. Inside. The mansion's interior was just as intimidating as the outside. A cold gallery of polished stone and modern art. But Elena wasn't looking at the decor. Her eyes were locked on the 4 people waiting for them. 3 guys and a woman, all in dark, practical gear, looking at her with a mix of suspicion and boredom. This is the asset? The woman asked, her eyes dissecting Elena. She's underwhelming. She looks like someone who just escaped Victor Drazi. Adrian shot back, his voice dripping with menace. Which means she's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Either way, she's under my protection. Pass the word. Anyone bothers her without my direct order, they deal with me. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. It hit Elena then. These people weren't just loyal to Adrian. They were scared to death of him. Adrian said. Take Elena to the guest wing. Get her anything she needs and post a guard on her door. To keep her in or to keep people out? Ree asked. Both. The dread in Elena's stomach became a block of ice. I'm a prisoner. You're protected, Adrian corrected her flatly. There's a difference. Is there? Elena clutched his jacket tighter. Because from where I'm standing, they look exactly the same. For a split second, something like respect flickered in Adrian's eyes. Fair enough. Let me be blunt. You are not a captive. You can leave right now. Walk right out that door. Elena's eyes darted to the door, then back to him. And Victor's men would shoot me before I reached the gate. So my freedom is just a fantasy. You're free to choose, Adrian said, but choices have consequences. Stay, you live, leave, you die. That's not my rule. That's just your new reality. It was a cold, logical trap, and it made her feel even more hopeless. For how long? She whispered. How long am I stuck here? Until Victor gives up on me. Adrian's face went grim. Victor never gives up, and he never forgets, so the timeline is indefinite. The last of Elena's adrenaline drained away, leaving her empty and shaking. Ree stepped forward, her expression softening just a tiny bit. Come on, she said, her voice now much gentler. The subject requires stabilization. We'll get her food and a shower. Elena wanted to snap back, to demand answers for her life being completely torched. But Ree's cold analysis was dead on. She was about to collapse. Her world was spinning. Understood, she finally caved. Ree led her through the massive estate, up a grand staircase, and into a suite that dwarfed her old apartment. It had a bedroom, a bath, and a lounge, all in a calming style that just felt creepy and sterile. Bathroom's through there, Ree said. Someone will bring you clothes that fit. Dinner is at 1900 hours, if you want to join, or we can bring it here. I'll eat here, Elena shot back. The idea of playing nice at a table with Adrian and his goons was a total non-starter. Ree just gave a slight nod. As you wish. And Elena, for what it's worth, you made the right call. Victor would have absolutely demolished you. As opposed to this, Elena gestured at her 5-star prison. Yes, Ree said, her voice flat. As opposed to this? She left, and Elena heard the quiet click of the lock, then the sound of boots taking a post outside. A guard for her safety, and to make sure she stayed put. At the window, Elena saw her own situation reflected in the lake. It was huge, wild, and trapped. A buzzing from the purse Celeste gave her, was that really just this morning, snapped her out of it. Time had turned into a complete mess. The text read, Sarah, where are you? Your father says you ran off with a stranger, and Victor is furious. Please confirm you are safe. Elena stared at the text, a link to a life that felt a million miles away. How could she possibly explain this? I am safe, she finally typed. I cannot talk right now. I will explain when I'm able. Do not worry. The words were a total lie, a firewall to stop Sarah from panicking. But really, what other option did she have? As she put the phone down, it lit up with another text from an unknown number. You have made a grave error, Elena, but my capacity for forgiveness is vast. Return in 24 hours and this will be forgotten. After that, the offer is withdrawn. Victor? The shaking in her hand was back. She read it 3 times, her mind racing. Was it possible? Could he actually forgive her? No way. Victor Drazi never forgave anyone. This was bait, a trap to get her to walk right back into his control. Once she was there, it would be game over. She deleted the message and blocked the number. With her hands still shaking and her sanity cracking, she knew she had to do something right now or she would completely break. Elena went in the bathroom and turned on the shower, cranking it to borderline scalding. She stood under the water until her skin was red, trying to wash away the church, to wash away the feeling of Victor owning her. When she got out, wrapped in a crazy soft towel, she saw someone had been in her room. A pile of clothes was on the bed, jeans, sweaters, and new underwear, all in her size. The question of how they knew was the start of a much scarier rabbit hole. How much intel did Adrian have on her? How long had this whole operation been planned? And the biggest question, what was his endgame? Elena put on the jeans and a gray sweater. They fit with chilling precision. Her wedding dress was a crumpled heap on the floor, a relic from a life she didn't have to live. She picked it up, feeling the weight of the ruined silk, and a fierce, almost brutal satisfaction washed over her. The dress was just a costume for a part she had just rage quit. She chucked it in the trash. A knock on the door made her jump. "Yes, your dinner," a man's voice called. Elena opened it to find a young guy with a tray. He couldn't have been older than 25, with a friendly vibe that was totally out of place in this fortress. "My name is Ethan," he said with a smile. "I'm the household coordinator. If you need anything, I'm your guy." "A time machine!" Elena shot back, her dark humor a small act of rebellion. Ethan's smile grew. "We're fresh out, but I can offer you pot roast, mashed potatoes, and a slice of pie." Against all reason, Elena's stomach growled. She hadn't eaten a thing since her morning coffee, too jacked up on anxiety. "Thank you," she said, taking the tray. Ethan nodded and started to leave, but then stopped. "Listen, I know this is a super weird situation, but Adrian is a good man. It might not seem that way now, but you are safe here, safer than you have been in a very long time." "How can you be so sure of that?" Elena shot back. "Because I know for a fact what Victor Drazi does to his possessions." Ethan's nice guy smile vanished. "And believe me, you do not want to learn that firsthand." He left before Elena could ask more questions. She ate the meal alone. The perfectly cooked food tasted like ash. Outside the window, the sun was setting, painting the lake in violent shades of orange and red. Beyond these walls, Victor was planning his revenge. Inside, Adrian was planning what? What was his ultimate goal for her? And deep inside her, Elena felt an emotion she hadn't felt in forever. Not fear, not defeat, but pure, uncut rage. She had been treated like a product, bartered, traded, kidnapped, and caged. Her life had been run by men who saw her as an object, a tactical advantage, anything but a person. That time was over. Elena Cross had no idea what came next. Surviving the next week was a coin toss. She couldn't tell if Adrian was a savior or just a new jailer in a fancier prison. But one thing was crystal clear: she was no longer property. Whatever came next, she would face it on her feet. And if Victor Drazi or Adrian Vale or any other man thought she was a pawn, they were about to get a painful surprise. The prize they were fighting over had grown claws, and she was finally ready to use them. As night swallowed the lake, Elena Cross began the grim work of calculating her survival. An argument under her window had shattered what little sleep she got. Every creak of the house, every footstep was a jolt of pure adrenaline, the certainty that Victor's men had finally found her. But the cold gray dawn arrived, and she was still alive. It was a victory, even if it felt small and empty. She went to the window and saw Adrian and Marcus on the lawn by the water. The glass muffled their voices, but their body language was screaming conflict. Marcus's hands were slicing through the air, his face twisted with fury. Adrian just stood there like a stone statue, his face blank, his posture calm. Then Adrian said something quietly, and Marcus froze solid. After a tense silence, Marcus gave a sharp nod and stormed off, his back rigid with defeat. Adrian stayed behind, staring at the water like he was demanding answers from the waves. Elena pulled back from the window just before he could turn and see her watching. The last thing she needed was to be labeled a spy. On the nightstand, her phone lit up. 3 texts from blocked numbers showed Victor's new tactic. "Time is running out, Elena. Your father begs me to bring you home. Shall I tell him you chose a stranger over family? I expected more from you. This is a disappointment." Elena deleted all of them without a second thought, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reply. To engage was to fall into his mind games, and they were already working too well. A sharp knock at the door made her flinch. "Who is it? It's Ree. Adrian wants you. Breakfast is in 20 minutes. It wasn't an invitation, Elena knew. It was a command. "I'll be right down," she answered. She showered, threw on another set of borrowed clothes, and tried to tame her hair so it didn't scream. "I'm losing my mind." It was a lost cause. The woman in the mirror had dark shadows under her eyes, skin like old paper and a hard mouth, a look she got from her mother when she was furious. Her mom, gone 3 years now, was lucky enough to not know her husband would one day use their daughter as a bargaining chip. In the harsh morning light, that felt like a gift. Elena followed the smell of coffee downstairs. The kitchen was a cold, sterile operating room of steel and marble with 0 warmth. 6 people sat at a long table. Adrian at the head, Marcus and Ree on either side of him, and 3 new faces. Every single one of them turned to stare the moment she walked in. Adrian, dead-eyed, tells Elena to sit. He puts her at the far end of the table, isolated. All eyes are on her. After a tense breakfast, Adrian makes it official. This is Elena, and she's under his protection now. Then we meet the crew, Nikolai the bruiser, James the lookout, and Sophia the smiling shark. Nikolai calls sheltering her a dumb move, but Elena fires back, saying a guy like Victor never loses interest, he demands blood. She gets it, she's a liability, a pawn between 2 kings. Sophia digs her vibe, but Marcus says guts don't stop bullets. Adrian then drops the hammer. She's a prisoner here. No phone, no friends, no escape. They're basically erasing her existence to keep her safe. Ree spills that Victor's hunt is on, and the entire underworld knows. The price on her head? James drops the bomb. $200,000 plus favors. Elena is floored. Adrian breaks it down cold. This ain't about her, it's about Victor's ego. She embarrassed him, so now she's just property to be reclaimed. She smirks, and Marcus warns her she has no idea how dead she is. Humiliating a monster like Victor means he'll want a pound of flesh. She says he should have just offed her at the wedding. Adrian hits her with a plot twist. Their beef started long before that. Then they get an alert. 2 cars are scoping the place out. Adrian immediately orders a lockdown and doubles patrols. His crew reports that Victor is calling in hitters from New York, Detroit, and Miami. This private beef just went national. The insane scale of it all finally hits Elena. She panics, suggesting they flee the country. Adrian shuts that down fast. Victor has contacts in 15 nations. She'd be dead in 48 hours. The only way out isn't hiding, it's putting Victor in the ground. She calls it blackmail. He calls it survival. He forces her to face it. Victor won't just kill her, he'll make it hurt. That finally breaks her spirit. She agrees to their deal, trapped by her own choices. So what's the plan? Adrian slides her a flash drive. He asks about a photo shoot she did 3 weeks ago at a hotel. She barely remembers it, but he jogs her memory. 2 big shots were there, Senator Carson and Victor Drazi. And get this, James reveals the senator is supposed to be cracking down on arms trafficking, but he was photographed with Victor, one of the biggest arms smugglers around. On the drive is her photo, showing a shipping manifest right behind them. They need a total intel dump from her. Every conversation, every face, every detail, that drive is a ticking bomb. Rhee says it's not a shield, it's a weapon to take Victor down. Elena's own rage finally convinces her. Victor's obsession has created a monster. Elena agrees to help, but on her terms. Intel for intel. She demands to know why Adrian really saved her. He just gets up and tells her to follow him. On a storm-swept terrace, he finally spills. 3 years ago, Victor tried to take his turf, broke a truce, and executed 4 of his best men. And the final twist? One of the men murdered was his own younger brother. So that's what she is, the key to his revenge. Adrian corrects her, not a weakness, but a strategic opportunity. He saw her engagement announcement and knew she was the perfect tool to exploit. She wasn't saved, she was acquired. Adrian drops the whole hero act, a calculated play to show he ain't like the other monsters in her life. He straight up tells her, saving you is just a bonus, not some grand gesture. This raw honesty hits different for a girl used to nonstop manipulation. She asks what he plans to do with her, sounding like the prisoner she is. Adrian's response is pure tactics, promising she won't be his possession to win her over, spinning this as her big break, not swapping one master for another. So when he dangles freedom like the grand prize, she's obviously skeptical. Adrian claps back, saying his control is all mental, not physical, like her father and Victor. He gives her 2 options. Help him take down their shared enemy and win her life back. It's not total freedom, but it's way better than a guaranteed dirt nap. Staring him down, Elena sees he's not lying, just exhausted and fueled by pure hatred. Her agreeing on her own terms is a massive power play, her first step to taking back control. Elena immediately demands a piece of the action, a classic move when you've been powerless forever. Adrian shuts it down, pulling the "for your safety" card. But Elena just hears more male control. To her, his fortress isn't a safe house, it's a prison, and he's just the newest guy calling the shots in her life, like her father and Victor. So she throws down an ultimatum. She'll risk her own life on her own damn terms. She is officially done being a damsel in distress. It's time to write her own story. You can see a flicker in Adrian's eyes. He gets it. He's a survivor too. But he still shuts her down, calling her plan a death wish. Elena fires back with straight facts, weaponizing her greatest skill, being invisible. She argues that because she's a total nobody, she can get into places his armed thugs can't even dream of. Basically, she's turning her weakness into their ultimate ace in the hole. She tells him they need each other. Her access is way more valuable than her testimony. Adrian just stares at her for a hot minute, calculating. Then, you see this tiny smirk. Homeboy is impressed with her strategy. You're either crazy brave or just plain crazy, he says. A bit of both, she shoots back. He reestablishes who's boss by putting the conversation on ice and ordering her under guard. But for Elena, even getting him to pause is a massive win. She's officially on the board. Her sharp fine shows she gets it. She's playing the long game now. She makes one demand. Her escort better not treat her like some fragile princess. So Adrian calls in Sophia, a woman he says is literally incapable of coddling anyone. Before she leaves, Elena casually asks about his dead brother, Daniel, a slick move to frame this whole thing as a team-up for revenge. Inside, she meets Sophia, who's got this relaxed vibe that screams, "I could end you." Sophia immediately sizes up the situation, telling Elena that her stunt with Adrian was either insanely reckless or incredibly brave. "So, you actually tried to negotiate with Adrian Vale," Sophia points out. "That means you're either a complete fool or have more guts than any dude in this place." Elena basically admits she could be both. Sophia lets out a laugh, like a nod of approval. Then she starts the grand tour, calling it a crash course in paranoia. Elena asks if the enemies are inside the walls. Sophia's whole vibe shifts as she confirms threats come from literally everywhere. Trust here, she makes clear, is earned, never given. They walk into the command center, the absolute nerve center of the entire op, where all the intel flows. In the middle of it all is Tommy, a tech whiz juggling a million data feeds. Sophia points to Elena, saying she's the reason for the red alert. Tommy confirms it, reporting that Victor's goons are swarming the perimeter. Elena pushes for details, so he shows her thermal images of 3 separate scout teams from the night before. Their goal was terrifyingly obvious. They were casing the joint, looking for a way to break in. Elena, now officially terrified, asks about their defenses. Sophia's reply is brutally honest. Every fortress has cracks, and survival means you plug those holes faster than the enemy can find them. Watching the monitors, Elena feels completely exposed. She quietly asks what their odds are and gets a knowing look between Sophia and Tommy in response. Then Sophia's voice goes ice cold, promising her that for a guy like Adrian, failure is not an option. Sophia announces their next stop is the armory. Noticing Elena's hesitation, she spells out the hard truth. If the enemy gets inside, self-defense is no longer a choice. The unspoken fact is that Victor made sure she never learned to fight. The idea of a weapon makes Elena's skin crawl, but she can't deny the cold, hard logic. The armory is a bunker packed to the gills with hardware. When Sophia tells her to pick a handgun, Elena balks, refusing on the spot. "This is a Glock 19 9mm, Sophia says, listing its features like a shopping list. In one smooth motion, she fixes Elena's grip and drills her on the absolute basics of not shooting herself. Elena's hands start to tremble. The gun feels impossibly heavy, like a cursed artifact. Her quiet, "I can't do this," gets slammed by Sophia's reply, reminding her that the alternative is being a victim all over again, making her entire fight pointless. Elena giving in and starting to train is a total game changer for her. The next hour is a blur of loud bangs in the basement firing range. At first, her shots go wild, her whole body fighting the gun's recoil, but after a while, she starts to get steady, her aim improving with every shot. When they finish, her ears are ringing and she feels this soul-deep exhaustion. Sophia's blunt, "not bad," is all the validation she needs. Practice is now on her daily schedule. "1 week, you'll be good," Sophia promises. 1 month, and your chances of staying alive actually go up. Elena silently prays she'll never need these skills. "Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's the motto," Sophia tells her. Later, Elena eats on autopilot, her mind stuck on the feeling of that weapon. She feels like she's fracturing. The person she was before now, just some ghost whose life was snuffed out at that god-awful wedding. this new Elena, forged in fire and trauma, is still unstable. For 4 days, she gets put through the ringer. Sophia handles the physical training while an analyst named James dissects her mind. They comb through photos of the wedding, looking for anything weird in the background. Her memory is a complete mess thanks to the trauma. She can't believe she was a professional who missed all the red flags. Then, on the 4th day, James freezes the video on a random dude in a gray suit just lurking in the background. James tries to get Elena to remember the man in the photo, but his face is just a smudge, lost in the pure chaos of the attack. The analyst gives her a name, Thomas Garrett, a fixer who operates in the legal gray zone. Elena physically recoils. Her brain is already at max capacity. James just coolly points out that in their world, just being in the same room as trouble makes you part of it. He slides a tablet over, switching from her spotty memory to cold, hard facts. The tablet shows the ghost of a spreadsheet. Elena confesses that during the whole ordeal, she went full robot mode, a survival instinct that wiped her memory clean of the details. James suggests they try to unlock those memories, but the look on her face screams doubt. Their session gets cut short when Marcus bursts in, his expression making it crystal clear that the situation just went from bad to catastrophic. A message from the big boss, Adrian, hits the room and sends a spike of ice through Elena's system. Suddenly, the air is thick with tension. In a voice that's way too calm, Adrian announces that their enemy, Vittorio, is finally making his move. He pulls up a surveillance feed showing a home invasion that is brutal, fast, and professional. A flex of Vittorio's muscle, and a clear signal that he's playing for keeps. The video cuts out just as a woman is hauled from the building. A split second of recognition turns to pure, sickening horror. It's her coworker, Sarah. Adrian's voice slices through the stunned silence, explaining Vittorio's sick strategy. He's turned her friend into a psychological bomb. As if on cue, a message from Vittorio lands, complete with a photo and a proposal for a trade. It's a precision-guided missile aimed straight at Elena's sanity. Elena's brain just short-circuited, zeroed in on the massive debt she owed Sarah for being so loyal. But the rest of the crew saw right through it. This wasn't a parley, it was a pure punishment trap. Elena desperately looked at Adrian for some hope, but his face just screamed, "We're boned." He called the whole mess exactly what it was, a psycho-narcissist's personal torture theater. Adrian broke down Vittorio's messed-up logic. He needed Elena to watch Sarah go down first for the ultimate psychological KO. Adrian's game plan was savage and simple. Do absolutely nothing. Elena was horrified by the ice-cold thinking, refusing to see Sarah as just some piece on a board. But Adrian's comeback was just brutal math. Moving now means 2 bodies, not 1. That single calculation shattered her spirit. Drowning in a mix of guilt and duty, Elena went rogue. "I'm going in alone," she announced, straight up defying his command. The room went dead silent, a full-on battle of wills. Adrian's voice dropped to a terrifyingly final tone. He laid out the hard truth. Going solo was a suicide run, and it wouldn't buy Sarah a single extra second. "This is all my fault," Elena choked out, the toxic idea taking root. Adrian jumped in, trying to get her to aim her anger at the real monster, Vittorio. He grabbed her shoulders, forced her to look at him, and asked what Sarah would want. But her reply showed just how broken she was. She thought martyring herself was the best way to be a friend. Adrian pivoted, trying to use her reckless energy. He threw out a 48-hour intel gathering window. Another team member, agreed, saying the fake deadline was a classic move to force an error. Elena was just a hurricane of panic and despair. Her quiet question about Sarah's fate during those 48 hours was dripping with pure, uncut terror. Sophia flipped the script with one killer line that cut right through Elena's grief. "This isn't a rescue," she said. "This is payback." The shaking in Elena's hands just stopped. A cold, hard look took over. Adrian jumped on this mood shift, firing off orders and turning their fear into focused rage. James started hunting Vittorio's safe houses. Marcus began hitting up his contacts. As the team kicked into high gear, Elena was still frozen, haunted by the live stream horror show. Adrian tried to say something, but she shot him a venomous glare and retreated back into her guilt cave. She was torturing herself with what-ifs, dead certain that if she'd just caved to Vittorio, this nightmare would be over. Adrian demolished her delusion with some brutal honesty. If she had surrendered, Vittorio would have either systematically fried her brain or just put a bullet in it. He told her the guilt trip was useless and ordered her to get to work. Numbly, she obeyed. For the next 6 hours, the grind of sorting data was the only dam holding back her screams. The work was a paper-thin defense. The clock hit midnight, and Vittorio attacked again. He sent a toxic message blaming her, along with a new photo showing off more of his handiwork. He even laid out a schedule of upcoming torture, a ticking clock counting down to hell. A violent tremor rocked Elena. James tried to say it was just mind games, but the words were totally hollow. James pointed out the obvious. Vittorio's goal was to make her unstable, to mess with her head until she made a deadly mistake. A look passed between them. They all knew the threat was legit. Elena stepped out to deal with the horror alone. When she came back, the terror in her eyes was gone, replaced with an icy resolve. This new focus put their search on fast forward, and by morning they had a hit. It was a derelict warehouse in the industrial district, owned by one of Vittorio's shell companies. "She's in there," Adrian confirmed, pointing at Tommy's satellite feed. "It's isolated, defensible, with a quick escape route." "So, how do we breach?" Elena asked, running on over 24 hours of caffeine and fear. "We don't," Adrian replied flatly. "Not yet. First we watch. Confirm she's inside, count the hostiles, map their patrols. We need 12 hours, maybe less." He looked her over. "I know you want to go now, but rushing gets you a body bag. She's already shattered, and if we fail, we'll just shatter her more," Adrian said with zero emotion. "Trust my experience. Patience is our only move here." Elena wanted to scream, but Adrian's scars were his resume. She just nodded. It became the longest 12 hours of her life. Sophia, sensing she needed to blow off steam, took her to the range. Elena torched 200 rounds, her aim getting sharper as pure instinct kicked in. "You're getting good," Sophia noted. "I hate it," Elena shot back, reloading. "Every trigger pull feels like practice for killing someone." "Then stop practicing." Sophia's advice was hardcore. Gut instinct is a survival tool. Overthinking is a liability. She told Elena she was a survivor, not a killer, a critical difference. Asked about taking a life, Sophia's logic was chilling. Feeling guilty is a perk for people who are still breathing. It was a dark philosophy Elena couldn't get behind, but she mentally filed it away for a future she prayed would never come. As night fell, Marcus and Nikolai wrapped up their recon. "We've got confirmation," Marcus said. "Second floor, northwest corner. I counted 3 tangos, but assume there are more. Victor's not there. The guy's famously cautious. His number 2, a guy named Ramos, is running the show." Adrian's face went rigid. Ramos! He's way more of a monster than Victor. He actually enjoys his work. A cold dread washed over Elena. The plan was a diversion. Team 1 breaches the front. Team 2, with Reese and Sophia, hits the roof to grab Sarah. "And what's my part?" Elena demanded. "You're staying here." "That's a hard no." A muscle in Adriana's jaw tightened. "This isn't a negotiation." "Everything's a negotiation. You taught me that," Elena fired back, standing her ground. "Sarah doesn't know any of you. She's terrified. She'll fight strangers, but she trusts me." "That trust is the exact reason you're a tactical risk," Reese cut in. "Your emotional attachment gets people killed. Or it's the one thing that guarantees she gets out alive, since I'm the only one who can talk her down." Elena stared down Adrian. "You told me it was my choice. This is it." After a tense beat, Adrian gave a surprising nod. "Fine, but you stick to the protocol, no exceptions. You follow Sophia's orders the instant she gives them." "Understood," Elena agreed, hit by a tidal wave of dread and relief. "Then suit up," Sophia said, her gaze cold and calculating. The next 120 minutes were a surreal blur of prep. Sophia geared Elena up in black tackwear, drilled her on the comms, and made her recite the plan until it was second nature. They gave her a Glock, her training model, with extra mags that felt like lead weights. "Odds you'll use it are low," Sophia said, "but low isn't zero." The drive to the warehouse was thick with suffocating silence. Elena was squeezed between Sophia and Reese, her heart hammering against her ribs. In the front seat, Marcus drove, while Adrian ran through the plan one last time. They parked 3 blocks out. At this hour, the industrial park was a ghost town, just hollowed-out buildings and flickering lights, the perfect spot for a stealth op. "Comms check," Adrienne whispered. Everyone answered. Elena's voice was shaky, but her signal was good. The teams split up. Marcus, Nikolai, and Adrian moved on the main building. Reese, Sophia, and Elena circled to the back to a rusty fire escape climbing the wall. "Go," Sophia breathed, nodding up. The climb was terrifying. The metal groaned under their weight, but she got to the top without making a sound. The warehouse roof was a wasteland of gravel and trash. A single hatch led inside. Reese checked the lock, pulled out a small kit, and had it open in less than 30 seconds. They dropped into total darkness. Inside was a maze of hallways and empty rooms, lit by the random bare bulb. Elena heard voices below. Guards, or worse. Her hand tightened on her Glock. Following a mental map, Sophia led them through the second floor toward the northwest corner. They snuck past skeletal machines, trashed offices, and a bathroom from hell. Then Sophia held up a clenched fist. The order was to stop. A faint light from a door ahead revealed 2 guys talking. "Target's location is confirmed," Reese breathed into his mic. 2 tangos outside. Give us the signal." "Roger that," Adrian's voice came back. 30 seconds. That half-minute felt like forever. Then Elena heard it, the front door getting busted open, followed by a storm of shouting and gunfire. The 2 dudes guarding Sarah's room immediately drew their weapons and moved toward the chaos. Big mistake. Reese and Sophia went full predator mode, fast and final. The guards were taken out before they even knew what hit them. One dropped by Reese's rifle, the other neutralized by Sophia in a blur. "Clear," Sophia reported, checking the door. It was locked, so Reese just popped the lock with a single round. The blast was deafening at the narrow hall. They stormed the room, and the air was thick with the smell of pure terror. Sarah was right there, tied to a chair just like the intel said, her face a wreck, her eyes wide with fear. "Elena," she gasped. "I'm here," Elena said, rushing over. "I'm here. I got you." Her hands were shaking as she worked on the ropes at Sarah's wrists. They were cinched on so tight they were digging into her skin. "Hurry up," Sophia snapped, her eyes glued to the doorway. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before they send backup." "I'm trying," Elena shot back. She finally got one of Sarah's hands free, then the other. Sarah just collapsed into her arms. She felt terrifyingly light, her whole body shaking like a leaf. "Think you can walk?" Reese asked. I think so." A new wave of gunfire echoed from downstairs, much closer now, followed by organized angry yells. "We have to go," Sophia commanded. "Now." They practically carried Sarah between them, racing back through the confusing corridors. Elena's whole world shrank to the sound of Sarah's desperate breathing and the hammering of her own heart. Behind them, footsteps pounded the floor. "Contact rear!" Reese shouted, spinning and opening fire. The first guy chasing them went down hard, but the sound of more echoed from below. Elena could hear the heavy thud of boots storming up the staircase. "Move! Now!" Sophia screamed, laying down suppressive fire. They scrambled up to the roof hatch. Sarah's foot slipped for one horrifying second before Elena's hand shot out, yanking her up with a surge of raw power. They crashed onto the rooftop, the wind biting at them, the fire escape a metal skeleton promising freedom. "Go!" Reese ordered. Their descent was a frantic, barely controlled fall, with Sarah crying out at every jarring impact. In the roof behind them, figures appeared, raising their weapons. Sparks flew as bullets slammed into the steel around them. Elena felt a round slice the air right next to her head, just as they hit the pavement. Marcus was right there, the van's engine humming, the side door flung wide open. "Get inside," he commanded. They fell into the vehicle. It shot forward before the door was even slammed shut, tires screaming as it peeled out. Elena held Sarah, who was sobbing into her shoulder, a broken but breathing person. "We did it," Elena whispered, trying to comfort both of them. "You're safe now. I have you." The warehouse disappeared behind them, but its shadow lingered. "We're not going to the mansion." "That would be predictable," Adrian said from the front seat, his voice tight with adrenaline. "Victor knows we have her." "He'll expect us back at the main base. We're heading to the safe house." Elena barely heard him. Her entire focus was on Sarah, who had fallen silent, her body rigid in Elena's arms. Shock, probably, or worse. "She needs a doctor," Elena said flatly. "There's one at the safe house," Reese replied, already on her phone. "Dr. Chen, he's discreet. I'm calling him now." The safe house was a generic apartment in a boring part of town, designed to be completely ignored. Marcus pulled into an underground garage, and they used a service elevator to get Sarah upstairs, dodging every single camera. The safe house was a sterile, cold place meant only for temporary stays. Elena guided Sarah to a sofa, keeping a hand on her shoulder to ground her. Sarah was showing all the signs of major trauma. The 1,000-yard stare, shallow, fast breathing. Elena tried to get through to her. "Sarah, it's me. You're safe now." For a second, a flicker of recognition crossed her eyes. Then came a gut-wrenching sob. She finally revealed the psychological game they'd played to shatter her. "They told me you were dead," Sarah choked out. "They said Victor killed you, and it was all my fault." Elena instantly shot down that poison. "None of this is your fault. Do you get that?" Before Sarah could answer, a doctor, an Asian man in his 60s named Dr. Chen, walked in. He moved toward Sarah with a calm, professional air. his eyes already sizing up her injuries. "I need to take a look at her," he said softly. Elena backed away, watching his careful, methodical work. Sarah flinched when he touched her, but didn't fight him. The doctor gave his diagnosis straight up. 2 fractured ribs, a likely concussion, and a lot of cuts and bruises, nothing that needs stitches. The medic listed her physical injuries, but confirmed she was stable. He then laid out 2 different healing paths, one for her body and one for her mind. Physically, she was going to be fine, but her mental recovery was a complete unknown, hidden behind that vacant expression. He treated her wounds, working on a silent, numb patient. Elena's presence was the only real thing in the room for her. His final instruction was clinical. 2 days of rest and watch her closely for any bad signs. "Let me know if anything changes," he said, leaving as quietly as he'd arrived. Elsewhere, Adrian, Marcus, and Nikolai were having a hushed, intense conversation, already drawing up plans for payback. Elena didn't care. Her entire world was about Sarah's immediate needs as she led her to the shower. The water washed away the physical grime of her capture, but the deep-seated trauma wasn't going anywhere, leaving her posture in a catatonic stillness. Dressed in oversized clothes, Sarah was guided to a bed. Elena's quiet suggestion to sleep unleashed a raw wave of panic. Sarah's hand clamped onto her wrist like a steel trap, her voice pleading, "Don't leave me." Elena promised she wouldn't, staying right by her side. Eventually, the sheer weight of what she'd been through dragged Sarah into sleep, her grip finally relaxing. But her rest was a nightmare, filled with twitches and silent tears. Elena faced the heavy reality of her own part in this, a guilt completely separate from Victor's twisted narrative. Victor's cruelty was all his own, but she had built the stage where he performed. Her choices had put Sarah in his path. This dark moment was cut short by Adrian's quiet arrival. He asked about Sarah, and Elena's answer was a brutal 3-part summary. Asleep, broken, alive. Adrian's attempt to comfort her hit a wall of cold, hard guilt. He called the rescue a team success, but her mind had already jumped to tactical mode, breaking down Victor's narcissistic rage and his guaranteed, violent comeback. "He's going to unleash his entire army now," she stated. Adrian didn't argue, instead outlining their plan to shut him down before he could rally his troops. Their trump card was a file full of incriminating photos that tied Victor to a trifecta of federal offenses, from selling weapons to plotting murder. With a witness on their side, the goal was to take him off the board completely. But this strategic victory brought Elena no comfort, just a deep, hollow feeling. The feds were scheduled to move at dawn. "By noon tomorrow, Victor Drazi will be in federal custody," Adrian said with total certainty. "The case is airtight." But Elena's past had taught her that nothing is ever truly certain. She changed the subject back to the person who mattered. And Sarah. The young woman was now the main witness, which painted a huge target on her back. Adrian explained the standard procedure: a new name, a new life, and federal protection. Then he offered his own security team instead, an offer that sounded to Elena like he was just building a fancier prison. "Safety is not a jail cell," Adrian shot back, his voice getting a sharp, unfamiliar edge. "I am offering her a chance to survive." Elena took his argument apart piece by piece, reframing their entire partnership as a cold, hard deal. "You needed an asset, and you got me. You needed leverage, and you used me." She saw all his protective moves as just window dressing on a business transaction. The accusation made Adrian's face harden. Is that truly what you believe this is? But his real motives were still a total mystery between them. With a quick rest up, Adrian was gone, leaving a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. But sleep? No chance. Elena's mind was running a post-game analysis on Victor's playbook. She got it now. His real weapon wasn't violence, it was mind games. The fake death, the weaponized guilt. Just as she's processing this, a scream rips through the apartment. Sarah, trapped in a nightmare. Elena's by her side in a flash, her voice low and steady. You're okay. You're safe. After a few brutal minutes, Sarah's shaking finally slowed down. Then came the next wave, straight from Victor's psychological warfare manual. The apologies. I'm so sorry, she just kept repeating. When Elena tried to shut that down, Sarah just let out a wild laugh and confessed. She talked. She gave him small, stupid details about Elena's daily life. To a predator like Victor, that intel was pure gold. But Elena just boxed it up. All that mattered was that Sarah was alive. She muttered some empty reassurances, but a whole new threat assessment was running in the back of her mind. Sarah's slip-up meant Victor could turn any of her safe spots into a trap. Handing Sarah off to Sophia, she found Adrian, Marcus, and James staring at a laptop. Raids go live in 20 minutes, James announced. Feds are in position at all 6 locations. An inside source was feeding them a live video stream. On screen, tactical teams were creeping through some government building. The main event was Victor's private mansion. A cold knot formed in Elena's stomach. She knew this place from photos. It was the gilded cage he'd built for her, a future she barely escaped thanks to Adrian. The breach team slammed through the doors, weapons hot, entering a massive, silent hall. The entire place was dead still like a tomb. He's not here, James stated, his voice tight. Marcus was already on the phone, his face turning to granite as he listened. Nothing at any of the targets, Marcus reported, confirming a total epic fail. His house, his offices, all wiped clean. Victor and his whole crew had just evaporated. Adrian's voice was dangerously calm. He knew. Someone talked. Only this team and the Bads knew the plan, which means we have a leak. Adrian broke it down, his eyes scanning everyone in the room. The poison of that word, leak, filled the air. A traitor meant they were never safe. We find the rat, Reese said, her voice cutting through the tension from the doorway. Before they start finding our bodies. Done. James, full audit on all comms, last 48 hours. Flag everything, Adrian ordered, then turned to Marcus. Get a head count on our people. I want eyes on everyone until we figure this out. Nikolai was floored. You think it's one of ours? I think Vittorio knows how to buy loyalty, Adrian shot back. And $200,000 is a damn good motivator. The accusation just hung there, choking the air. Elena felt a new kind of fear. Her protectors were now suspects. The evidence, she asked. Can't they just arrest him? James gave a grim laugh. They have to find him first. And Vittorio, he added, is a ghost when he wants to be. Just then, Elena's phone buzzed. She braced for another one of Vittorio's mind games. But the text was from her father. Elena, Vittorio says this all ends if you just come back. Full pardon, no more violence. Call me. The words hit her, and the fear turned to ice-cold rage. Her own father trying to trade her like a poker chip again. She held the glowing screen out for Adrian to see. He's using your dad, he said instantly. Playing the part of the reasonable man. The strategy was so obvious, but it screamed desperation. Your escape, then getting Sarah back. That was a direct hit to his ego. He was a wounded animal trying to look strong. With some fake act of mercy? Elena's laugh was sharp. Who would buy that? His followers will. He'll spin this to make us look like the aggressors and himself the victim. Elena deleted the text without a word. For the next few hours, paranoia was the only thing on the menu. Tommy swept every room for listening devices while James chased digital trails. Adrian pulled everyone aside one by one, hunting for the slightest crack in their story. Elena sat with Sarah, who looked like a ghost. I have to go home, Sarah finally said. It's not safe out there yet, Elena warned. This world right here is hostile, Sarah shot back. This entire life you live, hiding in the dark. She waved a hand at their luxury prison. I can't live like this. And stop apologizing. You're not the one I'm angry at. This isn't your fault. It's all of it. Vittorio's sickness, your dad's weakness, my screw-ups. Her voice trembled. Elena reached for her hand. You're incredibly strong. You survived. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm in a million pieces. Can't they be put back together? Sarah whispered. I doubt it. Every sound just sends me right back to that room. Her story ended with a shudder. Words were useless, so Elena just held her as she finally broke down. Much later, she found Adrian on the balcony, a dark shape against the city lights. The afternoon light was cold and distant, matching the mood perfectly. Any progress? Elena asked. Zero. He's either a ghost or we're chasing the wrong one, Adrian said, his eyes locked on the horizon. Neither option is good. So, what's the plan? We watch, we wait. A man with Vittoria's ego can't stay in the shadows forever. He'll expose himself and we'll be ready. So we do nothing? We stay ready, Adrian corrected, finally looking at her. Survival is 90% waiting, 10% action. This won't be some big movie ending. I wasn't hoping for a spectacle, Elena replied. I was just hoping for it to be over. It's close. You keep saying that, but he slips away every single time. We're always a step behind him. Elena crossed her arms. What if he's just smarter than us? What if he can't be caught? Then we change the game. We stop chasing him and we make him come to us. Using me as bait? By creating a situation where he thinks he's winning, but it's all on our terms. Elena studied his face, looking for the blueprint behind the poker face. You have a plan. The start of one, Adrian confirmed. Vittorio needs you back to fix his perfect image. So we're going to let him think he's getting you? You want me to just walk right up to him? I want him to think you are. The meet will be public, totally controlled. He'll walk in thinking he's won, but he'll be walking straight into a federal takedown. The risk was off the charts, but what other choice was there? And if it goes wrong, she asked, I'll pull you out just like last time. That might not be possible. It will be done, Adrian stated. His absolute certainty wasn't comforting. It was terrifying, like a man willing to burn the world down to keep a promise. A weird feeling washed over Elena, a sudden, powerful urge to protect him. This whole insane situation was twisting everything up between them. I need a minute to think about this, she said. Take your time. We have until... His phone vibrated, cutting him off. He answered, and his entire posture went rigid. When? Where? How many? A wave of pure dread hit Elena. Something was wrong. Adrian hung up. Vittorio hit my South Side warehouse. He torched it. 3 of my people were inside. No survivors. I'm sorry. This is a message. A move designed to make me angry, to make me reckless. Adrian's voice was completely flat, all emotion erased. It's working. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the start. End it. He was already moving to the door. Stay here with Sarah. Don't leave this apartment. Marcus and Ree are on watch. I'll be back when it's over. Adrian. But he was gone. Nikolai and James right behind him. Elena was left alone on the balcony, with the weight of 3 more deaths settling on her. When she went back inside, Marcus and Ree were talking in hushed, serious tones. What's his plan? Elena demanded. Termination, Ree said without blinking, by any means necessary. What does that mean exactly? Whatever it takes. The vague answer was 1,000 times more chilling than any real plan. The night dragged on. Elena and Sarah sat in a tense silence. Sleep was off the table. Around midnight, her phone lit up, a blocked number. She answered without thinking. Hello, Elena. Vittoria's voice was calm, cultured, and completely soulless. All right, let's talk. Just you and me. No guns, no backup. A quiet chat about how this all ends. Elena's grip on the phone tightened. How did you even get this number? I always get what I want. You, of all people, should get that by now. The silence on the line was deafening. I'm sending you a spot. Come alone. If pretty boy Adrian or his crew shows up, Sarah gets a bullet. Don't show in an hour and her family gets wiped off the map. You don't have Sarah anymore. True, but I've got her mom, and her brother's just a sophomore over at Northern Illinois. It'd be a real shame if something happened to them. A wave of pure sickness washed over Elena. You're bluffing. You really willing to bet their lives on that? Vittoria's voice went arctic. 1 hour, Elena. The location's on its way. Don't let me down. The line cut. A second later, a text buzzed in with an address for a downtown skyscraper. Her brain was screaming. This was the exact trap Adrian predicted. Vittoria was planning to kill her, but saying no meant condemning Sarah's family, a weight she knew she couldn't live with. She peeked at Sarah's door, where the exhausted girl was fast asleep. She watched her protection detail, Marcus and Ree, glued to the security feeds, completely in the dark about the gun to her head. If she told them, they'd stop her from leaving, and in doing so, sign that family's death warrant. The path was clear. Elena made her choice, throwing on her coat and feeling for the Glock that Sophia made her take before heading to the exit. Where are you headed? Ree's voice was sharp. Bathroom, Elena lied. Can't sleep. She slipped down the hall and out of the apartment into the Chicago blackness, walking toward that tower and the final showdown. Right then, a core piece of her just flipped a switch. She was done being a puppet, her life just a series of moves made by other people. She decided this fight would end on her own terms, even if death was the price. The high rise was a black spike against the sky, a temple of power. Elena watched it from across the street, the Glock a cold, heavy weight against her spine. The rideshare driver had been super nervous dropping her in the financial district at this hour. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop since she left, a storm of calls from Adrian, Marcus, and Ree, who now knew she was gone. Every single call was a desperate attempt to stop her. Elena powered the phone off and tossed it in a public trash can, cutting the cord for good. A single security guard was on duty in the lobby, a kid who looked terrified. He took the floor number without a word, just pointing to the elevators. The penthouse is on 42, he mumbled. You've been cleared for entry. She expected this. Vittorio's control was everywhere. the elevator ride up felt like a slow drop into a bottomless pit. In the mirrored walls, her reflection was a pale, hollowed-out woman, pushed to the edge but still standing. That face was not the same one that stood at an altar 2 weeks ago. That woman's choices had been made by others. This woman was walking into a kill box because she chose to. There was a strange power in that, a clarity in facing the end. The doors opened to a room of dark wood and low lights. Vittorio was in the center, hands tucked into the pockets of a designer suit. He looked just like he did in the church, calm, in control, and deadly. But his eyes were a deeper, colder black hole now. "Elena," he said, his voice casual, like he was greeting an old friend. "I'm glad you came. I honestly wasn't sure you would." "You threatened an innocent family. I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice." Vittorio waved a hand at 2 chairs by the window. "Sit. Let's be civilized." "I'll stand. Suit yourself." He walked to the window, looking down at the city lights. "It's spectacular, isn't it? All those tiny little lives, clueless about how the world really works, about who's really pulling the strings." "Is that how you see yourself?" Elena shot back. "Superior, like your money and your violence make you important?" A tiny, humorless smile touched Vittoria's lips. "My power buys me a freedom you can't even imagine. Your life has been one cage after another, built by your father, by fate, by your own weakness. When Adrian Vale crashed our wedding, you thought you found a savior, but all he did was move you from a golden cage to a different kind of prison. He's nothing like you. No, he's much more dangerous. My cruelty is honest. Adrian hides his behind a mask of honor. But we're cut from the same cloth, men who take what we want and destroy anything that gets in our way." Victor turned to face her. "The only difference is that with me, you would have had everything. Safety, comfort, security. And what has Adrian given you? A life on the run." "He gave me a choice," Elena fired back. "That's a hell of a lot more than you ever did." "Choice?" Victor said the word like it was poison. "Let me show you the consequences of your choices. Sarah, attacked because you ran. 3 of Adrian's men burned alive because you stuck your nose where it didn't belong. And now you're here, your last choice leading you straight to your own grave. How's that freedom working out for you?" His words hit harder than she expected. He wasn't wrong about the body count her decisions had left behind. People had died, but that didn't make him right. "You were the one who hurt Sarah," Elena replied, her voice low. "You're the one who killed those men. My choices didn't pull any triggers. You did. This is all about you losing control. Someone finally told you no, and your paper-thin ego couldn't take it." Victor's face went completely blank like a stone mask. "Watch your mouth, Elena. Your life is mine to command." "No, it's not. I'm here because you're desperate." A sudden, sharp clarity sliced through her fear. "The cops are closing in. Your allies are ghosting you. Your entire empire is collapsing. You thought getting me back, proving you still owned me, could fix it all. But that's over, Victor. The truth shows up long before people are ready for it." For a second, Victor was totally still. Then, a low rumble of actual laughter came from his chest. "You've developed a spine," he said. "I'll give you that. The girl I was engaged to would never have talked to me like that." "The girl you were engaged to is dead. You killed her when you tried to buy her." "A shame. I'll miss her." His hand slipped inside his jacket. Elena's own hand shot to the Glock at her side, but all he pulled out was a phone. "Let me show you something." He turned the screen, showing a live feed of Sarah's mother's house. 2 of his goons were standing guard. "One phone call," Victor said softly, "and my men go inside. Sarah's mother dies, her brother dies. Maybe I'll have them burn the whole house down. A tragic accident." Elena's fingers brushed the rough grip of her gun. "You won't do it." "What's stopping me? What leverage do you have?" "You need me to cooperate. If they're dead, I have no reason to listen to you. And a woman with nothing left to lose is a very dangerous thing." Victor considered her point. "Fair enough. So here's the deal. You come back to me, put on a smile for the cameras. We'll say Adrian brainwashed you. We'll get married. You will play the part of my loving wife, and Sarah's family gets to live. I'll even let Adrian live, as long as he stays out of my business. And I'm supposed to believe you'll stick to a deal like that? I expect you to understand it's the best one you're going to get." Victor put his phone away. "The other option is I start killing everyone you care about, one by one, until you're begging me to take you. Then I'll kill them all anyway, just to prove I can." Elena's hand squeezed the pistol grip. She could draw, shoot. Maybe she could even drop him before his men got to her. But that wouldn't save Sarah's family. It wouldn't call back the men at that house. "First, I need proof they're safe," Elena said. "Pull your men back. Let me see that Sarah's family is safe, and then we'll talk." A small smile played on Victor's lips. "Smart, untrusting. I like this version of you way more than that timid girl from the wedding." He pulled out his phone again. "But no, you're not in a position to make demands. You have one choice. Take my deal, or I make the call." The elevator behind her dinged. Elena whipped around, her heart hammering, expecting more of his men. Instead, it was Adrian, with Marcus and Nikolai right behind him, all of them armed to the teeth. "Get away from her, Victor." Adrian's voice was dangerously calm. Victor's cool never broke. "I was expecting you." "Did you really think I'd let her walk in here alone?" This was never a trap for her. Victor throws his arms out like he's putting on a show. "All right, everyone, this is the grand finale. One way or another, it all ends tonight." "I agree," Adrian says flatly, then his eyes lock on Elena. "Are you hurt?" "No," she shoots back. "But he's got men at Sarah's family's place." "Had men," Marcus cuts in, all business. "We pulled them 10 minutes ago. Her mom and brother are safe." Elena can finally breathe, but Victor just lets out a laugh. "I should have seen that coming. Always so perfect, Adrian. It's cute." Victor's hand slips back into his jacket, pulling out a pistol this time. But perfect isn't bulletproof. And just like that, 3 more goons melt out of the shadows Elena never even saw. Their weapons are all trained on Adrian's crew. "So, here's how it's gonna go," Victor announces. "Everyone puts their guns down, real slow-like, or we're about to find out who's got the faster trigger finger." "I've got federal agents downstairs," Adrian says, his voice ice. 3 floors down, waiting for my word. You fire that thing, they're coming up, and this whole party is over for you." "You're bluffing," Victor snaps back. "If you had feds, you wouldn't have shown up yourself." "I'm not bluffing." Adrian's face is a complete mask. "This was the plan all along. Get you out in the open, let the government take out the trash." For the first time, a crack appears in Victor's smug facade. "You're lying." "Am I?" Adrian says, holding up his phone in his free hand. A single button press would have ended this whole standoff. But Adrian holds off, giving Elena the stage to face her nightmare. Victor stares at her, not like she's a person, but a prize to be won. That look flips a switch in her. Pure primal instinct. Her training kicks in, her body moving faster than she can think. The gunshot cracks the air, the bullet slamming into Victor's shoulder and spinning him around as his gun hits the floor. In that exact same second, both teams open fire. The room explodes into a storm of bullets and bodies. The noise is insane, every shot like a cannon blast, and Elena flinches back. The weight of what she just did tries to crash down, but survival mode shoves it away. Marcus grabs her, pulling her behind cover as the gunfight gets crazier. Through the chaos, she sees Victor on the floor as his men are systematically taken down. The entire power dynamic just got flipped on its head. Adrian towers over Victor, the man who tried to own Elena completely. A broken, insane laugh escapes Victor's lips. It's the sound of a god complex shattering into a million pieces. Then Adrian makes the call. The sound of approaching sirens is what finally shatters Victor's delusion, and you see pure panic flash in his eyes. Adrian starts reading off the federal charges, each one a wrecking ball smashing the legal fortress Victor built for himself. The evidence against him is a slam dunk. Photos, sworn statements, a 5-year-long paper trail of dirty money. All Victor can do is spit out a weak curse. As feds flood the suite, Adrian's team hands him over. The whole time, Victor's venomous stare is locked on Elena. He makes one last threat, but the words are just hot air. He knows on some level that he's already lost the game. A Fed, Special Agent Chen, comes up with a calm vibe to escort Elena out of there. Adrian's protective mode instantly kicks in, demanding to know her legal status. Chen assures him she's being treated as a witness, a victim, his tone totally level. Her body starts to shake as the massive adrenaline rush finally wears off. When they get absolute confirmation that Sarah's family is safe, a wave of relief so huge hits Elena it leaves her unable to speak. As they drag Victor out, he spits one last toxic comment at Elena, trying to paint her rescue as just jumping into a different cage. It's a textbook abuser move, trying to steal her power. But Elena's quiet reply, "I don't belong to anyone," is a mic drop moment of victory. The rest of the night is a long, painful debriefing, picking apart her entire ordeal. The sun is coming up when Agent Chen finally gets her to a safe location. It's a new day. Inside, Elena is met by Sarah, who is visibly horrified by the blood all over Elena's clothes. The news that the monster was captured finally breaks through Sarah's tightly controlled emotions. Elena pulls her into a hug, a shared moment of release as both women finally begin to process the nightmare. After Sarah gets a grip, Elena goes to find Adrian, needing to piece together a story from the night's utter chaos. She admits she knew he was watching her, a fact he doesn't deny. When she thanks him, he brushes it off, giving her all the credit for its final shot. She talks about the shooting with a weird, clinical distance, saying she felt nothing. It was just something that had to be done. Her mind walling itself off from the horror. This struggle to even connect with her feelings is a massive red flag for trauma. Then his final poisonous words echoed in her head. She tells him what Victor said, that she just traded one controller for another. After a long, heavy silence, Adrian asks her what she believes. Elena admits she thought his goal was just revenge at first, but things have changed. She starts to analyze their connection, questioning if it's just gratitude, a bond formed in crisis, or something real, a classic sign of a trauma bond. Her need to get away is a clear signal she wants to build her own life. I am making my own choices now, she says, her voice firm. A choice I should have made before someone else made it for me. I have to find out who I am when I'm not a fugitive or a victim. Her eyes lock with his. Only then can we figure out what this is, free from any kind of debt or force. He watches her for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, with a slow nod, Adrian gives in. Okay? That one word completely defies her expectations of a fight or a debate. He's letting her go, releasing her from any debt she might feel, his voice thick with emotions he's pushing down. I have no claim on you, he says again. He suggests there might be a future, but only after she goes on her own journey. We'll find out if this is real or just a product of adrenaline and being trapped together. Elena understands the new terms. Terrifying, she thinks, but also freeing. She decides to accept the fear that comes with real freedom. It's complicated, and not the fairy tale I was sold, she reflects, but it's mine. 3 weeks later, her healing journey is on display in an art gallery in a new town. A series of photos chronicles a road trip she took to reclaim her own story. She's in daily contact with Sarah, who has also started therapy. For both of them, the path to recovery is finally taking shape. Sarah's healing is going well. Elena makes a hard choice, blocking her father's number and all his attempts to contact her, a final necessary cut. The surprising success of her art gives her financial independence, the foundation of her new life. Her world is her own creation now, a jumble of pride, disbelief, and the constant low buzz of anxiety that's part of healing. It was completely terrifying. This new life was lonely at times, but it was also the most alive she had ever felt. A text from Adrian came through. It was thoughtful and supportive, respecting the space she had asked for. The conversation that followed was light, building a connection free from the constant stress of their past. She typed, "I miss you." The confession was impulsive, surprising even herself, and felt like a real connection, not the trauma-based link she'd been afraid of. For 21 days, trying to forget Adrian had been useless. The distance only made their connection feel stronger. His message was a quiet promise of patience, acknowledging the hell they'd been through together. A montage of their ordeal proves it. The empty church, the fire, the warehouse, and a final sunrise. He was the one who gave her a fake choice when she was powerless. The main question remained, can a bond forged in chaos ever work in peace? Still, meeting him again was going to happen. A strategic play to take control of her own story. That story might still include the man who was both her danger and her safety. A classic trauma bond situation. First, though, she had to finish rebuilding her own identity. Elena looked at her photos, the physical evidence of her change. Outside, it began to rain hard, as if washing the city clean. In this place, Elena Cross was finally the main character of her own story, a life built on her own terms. The ending wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was its own kind of victory.
Viewed clinically, the central conflict is not merely criminal, it is psychological domination. Victor exhibits classic features of coercive narcissistic control: grandiosity, entitlement, punitive retaliation, and an inability to tolerate public humiliation. Elena's refusal is not interpreted by him as autonomy, it is interpreted as injury, therefore he escalates. Sarah is abducted not because she is strategically essential, but because Victor understands that terror becomes more effective when it is redistributed through emotional attachment. This is how coercive systems function. The target is rarely attacked alone. The attacker contaminates the target's entire relational field, forcing love itself to become a vulnerability. Elena's condition is equally important. Her paralysis at the beginning resembles what trauma specialists often identify as learned helplessness, complicated by survival-based attachment. She has spent so long being overruled by stronger personalities that choice itself feels dangerous. Even when escape becomes possible, her first instinct is to calculate who will suffer if she moves. That is the psychology of captivity. Victims do not simply fear pain, they fear responsibility for the violence of the abuser. This is why many remain, not because they are weak, but because their moral instincts have been weaponized against them. The life lesson, then, is deeply uncomfortable but essential. Manipulation becomes most lethal when it convinces the victim that endurance is virtue. Elena begins healing the moment she names reality accurately. Her father did not do his best. He betrayed her. Victor did not love intensely. He sought ownership. Even Adriana's protection had to be examined for hidden power. Recovery starts where euphemism ends. Once Elena abandons false language, her mind reorganizes around truth rather than fear. From there, behavioral change becomes possible. She trains, negotiates, resists, acts. In psychological terms, she reclaims agency. In human terms, she stops confusing survival with surrender.